I'm Rose Martin, and this is Real Life with our very favorite life coach, Susan Harf, who offers us tips and strategies to navigate those tricky situations we find ourselves in. Like you, I can't wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Rose. I'm happy to see you, and I'm so glad that you decided to join us as well. So today we're talking about finding your voice.
Ooh, finding your voice. What does that mean?
Well, I think it means several things. One of the things that comes to my mind is a situation that I was in with a group of women. We were all sitting around a big table, and the person who was bringing the food brings out this huge appetizer platter, and it was mostly cheeses and crackers. And I was sitting next to a woman, and I said to her, you know, this is so heavy. Why don't I just put it down and then you can decide what you want and then we'll move it on? And she said to me, oh, just give me whatever. And I said, well, you know, it's all very different. You know, we have Havarti and we have, you know, this kind of cheese and that kind, and they don't taste alike. What's your favorite? And there's a lot of different kinds here. And she said, oh, I don't care. And the more I interrogated her about what was her favorite, and you know, then I'm telling her, well, my favorite is Fontina, do you like that? She didn't have a favorite, and moreover, I don't think she knew what it would be, because I don't think she ever stopped to consider I should get what I want. And it's sort of a metaphor for what we're going to talk about today, because too often I find, and I want to say, I see more women, I hear more women speaking to me about this issue than men. That's not to say that men know themselves better. I think that, and this is going to sound very sexist, I think that some women don't stop to think about getting what they want, because some of us have been trained in our families of origin to not necessarily be the person to be out front or to be the person getting what they want. And there are many different reasons for that. And it's not always a sexist option. Sometimes it's because there are maybe a lot of kids in the family, and so you really don't get what you want. You just take what's last, or you take the first, or you know, it's the kind of thing where that's just not an option. That's not something that you're thinking about.
Does it also mean finding your own opinion or utilizing your own opinion in a given situation? So maybe she didn't know what kind of cheese she liked, and maybe she was unfamiliar, so really didn't have an opinion of knowing what to pick. But in other times you can find your voice when either there's a little trepidation about, should I say this or should I not say this?
Sure.
So then that's finding your voice.
Sure. And in all fairness, you know, cheese is something not everybody knows about. Maybe you're not a big cheese eater, so,
right.
So it could have been just, you know, of course I always read more into everything, so.
You were ready to drill down on that.
I'm a coach, that's right, I'm ready to drill down all the time. But so maybe that was it, but so it could have just been something as innocuous as, I don't eat cheese very much and I don't really care, okay. Or I don't care, and we don't always have to have an opinion about everything. But finding your voice has to do with, number one, asking yourself the questions that you need to ask to know yourself better and to understand yourself first. Secondly, when you do figure out who you are and what makes you tick, and I want to talk about some of that here, after you figure it out, the second part of it is accepting who that is, accepting the totality of who you are, and then not just accepting but celebrating who you are to the point where you are very okay not thinking the same thing about or having the same opinion about something that your spouse does or your child does or your friends do or society for that matter, unless, you know, I don't advocate doing something illegal, but you know,
I'm glad about that.
And I do, yeah, and I do think that we need to go along with the societal norms in most cases when we're in groups. But the bottom line is that we have to be more cognizant of not just accepting who we are once we find out and figure out the things that make us who we are, but we also need to be happy about that. And then lastly, when we're happy with who we are, then we can think about some things according to whether it's our personal life, our professional life, both. We need to think about what is it that we want in this life. and what is it are we willing to do to get it? And that correlates, that last part correlates with how much do we respect and love ourselves, and not in a way that makes us uninterested in other people getting their needs met. I'm not talking about being selfish here. I'm talking about having a full understanding of what it is who it is we are and what it is we need.
So let's go back to the beginning. So
Yes.
those specific questions that you're going to ask yourselves, we all need to ask ourselves to figure out who we are and the other things you said that
Wanna
are
hear
important
it?
to us. Yeah, I
Wanna hear
know
what they
I
are?
want to hear them.
Okay.
That's where I want to
So,
start.
Okay. So one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, what makes us happy? When we think about a happy day, when we think about a good day, what were we doing? What are the things that make us upset? What make us cry? What makes us cry? What makes us sad? What makes us feel depressed? Is it, and that has to do also with our environment, not just what, but who and where and when. So for instance, I am someone that is motivated by my environment, and I'm very happy that I don't live anymore in a gray environment. And I'm from upstate New York. I love upstate New York, but one of the things I don't love about it is the sun is not always shining in upstate New York, and it seems to be shining a lot more here. And so I'm very happy that I'm not faced with that gray, because I do tend to bring my weather with me. So it's not as though I can tell you that I get depressed all winter long. That's not it. It's really the aspect of the light and the sun. And I'm someone that when I'm inside, I have a lot of lights on. So I don't like the gray sky. So that is something that I know about myself. And if I can, would want to change that. Would want to change where I live.
So once you know what makes you happy and maybe what makes you sad, or what some of the triggers are to having a good day or a perceived bad day, then you say, well, accept it or make steps to change some of those things?
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes what we do is we choose to concentrate on the part of the environment or the part of the situation that does make us happy. So for instance, if you are someone who likes to be in charge of the, let's say the task at work, or the division that you're in, or you like to be the bottom line, you like to be the person that says, okay, this is what we're going to do. Maybe you may not be able to be president of the company yet, but you might be able to lead your committee. Mm-hmm. You might be the person who is the one to speak to the findings to the larger group. So we can sort of carve out that role for ourselves, even among a situation that isn't necessarily perfect.
Okay, so then number 3.
So number 1, as we said, is asking the questions. Along with asking the questions is ask other people questions about yourself.
That can be hard, Susan. Be very, very vulnerable, right? If you're going to ask people, tell me what you think about me, or is it more structured than that?
I think it can be tell me what you think about me, but what I advocate is if you're trying to find out, for instance, what move you need to make professionally, it helps to ask people who have been with you in a variety of different settings, who know you in many different ways. And even though you're asking a professional question, you can still ask people that you're not necessarily working with the same question. So
do you differentiate then for personal relationships and professional relationships?
what you're asking?
Yes.
Possibly. But let's say we're asking for professional reasons. So you may say to those people who you're asking, who know you in a number of different ways. In other words, you may ask a relative this question, you may ask a coworker, you may ask a neighbor, you may ask somebody that you used to babysit for. People who know you in a variety of ways. I'm thinking of hosting a talk show. What do you think of that idea? Tell me what you think. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And allow people to give you feedback with regard to specifically what you ask them. They may give you more feedback than that. They may say, well, I think you'd be a great talk show host, but make sure you let the people that you're interviewing talk once in a while. So in other words, they may say, yeah, I like this idea, and here's a caveat about that. Or they may say, let me tell you what I really think you'd be great at. But usually what I find when I instruct people to ask that question of others, people are very willing to give you their opinion, and the truth is they don't want to hurt you. So they're most likely going to give you that opinion in a way that you can hear it.
So then do you want to only ask your cheerleaders, or do you want to have some different people that you ask that question to? Some who know you intimately and some who know you in a different capacity?
If you ask a number of different people the same question, they are all going to become your cheerleaders because they're going to be invested in that outcome when you do that. So we've already talked then about how you find out about yourself. Now let's talk about what are the things you need to do to allow yourself the right to have these opinions, have these desires, and have these goals. Once you find out what needs to be the goal or where you want to go or what makes you happy or what will make you happier, then you need to give yourself permission to have the time, the strength, and the willingness to get it. And that involves not feeling selfish about your voice, believing as though you're an important person, not just to others, but to yourself. And so then you start to ask yourself the question of, if I accept these things about myself, what does that look like? So for instance, if you're in a marriage with somebody who constantly puts you down and says, no, that's wrong, that's crazy, that's unacceptable, why would you want to do that? Or we're not going to do that. Then once you figure out, no, I'm worth it. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to get the things that I want out of life, personally and professionally. Then your answers become different. Your answer to yourself is different and your answer to others. So someone who you may have said before, okay, all right, we'll do it your way. Instead, you may say, it's important to me that I swim every morning. Now, maybe that's not good for you and the rest of the family if I swim in the morning, so I'm willing to swim in the afternoon sometimes, but I need to swim. That's a different answer than, okay, I won't go.
Right, so you're not being passive, you're advocating for yourself, but also, you know, I think the part of being the willingness to change or the willingness to find the voice, the willingness to make the changes oftentimes is a little bit of the difficult part, because you can know yourself, you can know what's happening and if you're happy or not, but the willingness to actually change.
Exactly. You're absolutely right, Rose. You're such a good life strategist. I've told you that many times. The fact is that willingness and that belief system that we have is exactly what needs to change. So there are ways to do that. One of the ways to change how you feel about yourself is to invest in yourself. If you feel bad about how you look or how you feel unhealthy, you feel like you can't move as easily, you feel like you want to be healthier, you want to be more vibrant, you want to be able to do more in your day, you're sluggish, you're tired, you don't see yourself having the get up and go that you need to do to change, for instance, a job, a personal relationship, anything, all of the above, then there are things you need to do to invest in that goal. So instead of saying, well, maybe I'll exercise and maybe I won't, you take out your calendar and you say, this is when I'm going to do it every day or every other day or 3 times a week. And it doesn't have to be an obsession. But change is hard, like you said. But it does not happen if you are not the cheerleader of your own change. So in order to be happier, we need to first find out what it is that makes us happy. Does that include environment? Does that include people in the environment? Does that include my profession? Does that include my personal life? And then start to chip away at these things, not all at once, and not like a New Year's resolution where we say, I'm gonna go from being the new hire and doing just what anybody asks me to do at the job to being chairperson of the board. That's not going to happen in a week.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm thinking of is you want quick responses, right? You want to see what you're doing, the results of those efforts, sometimes more quickly than is reasonable.
Exactly. So what we need to do is we need to break up finding our voice into small parts. So if the first part is getting to know ourselves, that can take a very long time. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. And you need to give yourself the time to sort of monitor in a way that you haven't before why it is you feel the way you do. So, for instance, when I'm with that friend, something's off. I just don't feel good. Whenever she shows up at my house, there's something about my interaction with her, or the way I feel when I'm with her, or the things that she says to me. I don't really know what it is. I need to figure this out. And maybe what I figure out is that this is somebody who puts me down in sort of ways that are not necessarily overt, but she's putting me down. She may say things like, "Oh, you don't really think that, do you?" You know, in that kind of way. Or, "Are you really going to wear that today?" Or, you know, "I'm just telling you because I love you." That person may say a variety of different things that you haven't ever monitored before, and you don't know why you don't feel good when you're with her, but now you're starting to monitor it, and you start to say to yourself, "You know what? She's saying things to me that she doesn't have a right to say. Yes, we are close, but that does not give her the right to judge me, tell me what to do, or how to do it." And so you may make the decision, you know what, I'm putting some distance in this relationship. So that's sort of an evaluative process that's not going to happen right away.
Is that also finding your voice to say something to her about how you feel or how you don't appreciate those comments, or respond instead of avoiding it?
Yes, and sometimes you need to say something to the person because they're always going to be in your life and you don't have a choice. They may be your boss, they may be your coworker, they may be your partner. You may have made the decision, you're not changing the environment, you're not changing the entire direction, but you need to change this piece of it. You need to change your interaction with this person.
And I think it's important that you don't have to change everything all the time.
Correct.
Right? You can let some things roll off your back. Everything's not in catastrophic issue.
Exactly.
Pick and choose.
And that's exactly what I wanted to say is, you don't have to say what's on your mind all the time. You don't have to tell the person, we're not going to be close anymore.
Yeah.
but you can say things like, actually, I've decided I'm not going to do that with you. I know you believe that going to that meeting is the right thing to do. It's not right for me. Or, I'm not going to do that. And you don't need to say I can't, because you can. And so what you can, instead of say I can't, what you need to say is, I won't. And sometimes when you start saying I won't, it can be uncomfortable for you because you haven't spoken that way before. But the more you say it, I won't, the more comfortable that will feel. So when somebody says to me, are you going to the meeting? And I'm not going and I don't want to go, but I could easily go to the meeting. I say, I won't go to that meeting.
And you know, that really has a different message for the other person also, instead of I can't, whereas they may come back with all kinds of reasons that you can. And then instead it's like, I won't, and they're like, oh, okay.
Of course, so that's not finding your voice
Right.
if you do that, because you're giving them an out. You're giving them a way, or giving them a passage. You're giving them a passageway. You're giving them a way to change your mind. And if you value your voice, if you value what you think, then you don't want to have your mind changed. You are happy with your decision. And also, we don't all care about the same things. So if somebody says to me, do you want to go to the Italian restaurant or do you want to go to the Asian restaurant? I love both. So I may say I don't care. That doesn't mean that I don't have a voice. It means I don't care about that specific decision at that moment. If you do care, you make the decision. That's fine with me. So we don't always have to care about the same things that each other does. Let me also touch on, before we end today, I want to talk about another way of finding your voice. Sometimes people ask us questions or elicit our response to things that are inappropriate. And we don't want to answer that question. So people would say to me sometimes, let me think of, okay, so if somebody says, how much should you pay for that house? I don't want to answer that question. But yet I may be very caught off guard when they ask me. I wasn't expecting them to ask me the question. I'm showing them around the house and they say, well, how much should you pay for this? I wasn't expecting that. So what I need to do is, I may not know what to say. And so what I need to do at first is step back and think. When somebody asks you a question, you don't gotta answer it that moment. So it's perfectly fine to say, I'm not sure I'm gonna answer that. Or, give me a moment. And then think about what you want to say. Sometimes what I say back is, I wonder why you feel I need to know that. Mm-hmm. What did you pay for that sweater? I wonder why you feel I need to know that. Or they may say, when you give that answer, they may say, well, I'm looking for a house in this area, so I just want to know what's realistic. Or I'd like a condo in this same building, so I just want to know what you paid so that I don't overpay. So they may have a very legitimate reason, to them, legitimate reason for asking you that question, but I still don't want to answer. So I may say, I wonder why you feel a need to know that. And they may say, well, I'm looking at a condo in this building too, and so that's why I asked you. And then I would say, I don't discuss that with people.
Right, so you don't have to give in even if they give you a reasonable reason why they asked the question. You don't feel
Absolutely not.
compelled to answer any question that anyone throws at you.
Absolutely. Another thing I don't feel compelled to do is when somebody calls me up, I answer. I'm starting by saying what I do feel compelled to do. If somebody calls me up, I answer, if I can. But if I can't, if I'm in the middle of a conversation with someone else, first of all, if I'm working or if I'm in a coaching session, I absolutely am not going to answer. But if there's a reason why I deem it necessary to not answer the telephone or not answer the question, then that has to be okay. If I've decided I don't answer these questions in general, or if I've decided I'm not going to answer you when you ask me this question, I may answer my brother if he asks me that question, but I'm not going to answer it to somebody who I just walked into who just walked up to me on the street. So I will sort of define what I'm going to do for the person. I don't discuss that with people, or my husband and I don't discuss that with friends, or whatever the parameter is. I feel comfortable saying what it is because I'm comfortable with me. I'm comfortable with my decisions. I don't make rash decisions. I don't insult people. I don't just not speak to them. So ultimately what I was going to say about answering the phone, I try and answer the phone when somebody calls. My MO is, people who know me know that I usually answer the phone. And we all know people who usually don't.
And some people, like me, my phone is not always near me.
Sure.
So I may not even get to the phone until I'm finished with who knows what I'm in the middle of doing.
Exactly. So accessibility is a right. It's something that is part of our voice, giving accessibility to other people. And that is what we need to do, but we need to do it within the parameters of what we find acceptable. And that is different for different people.
I think one of the things that I love about this conversation is, sometimes we do get caught off guard and we don't know what to say. And we're not,
Yes.
if we might not be quick on our feet with some kind of response, then it's very awkward. And
Yes.
so then you're fumbling, and then it's like, well, are you hiding something? What don't you want to do? Why don't you want to tell me? Or all kinds of other things, get in the way of what was actually something very simple.
Exactly.
Just take a minute and very clearly use your voice.
Exactly. And then there are times when people ask you questions, and I don't know why this is. Too often, people feel a need to give an answer even if they don't know the answer. And I am all for one saying, I don't know. I don't need to know everything. So if somebody asks me a question that's not my expertise, or even if it is, and I don't know the answer at that moment, I say, you know what? That is a very good question, and I am going to research that, and I will get back to you. When my clients ask me questions, sometimes somebody will say to me, do women have this issue as often as men, or do men have the issue more? I may say, I don't really know that about this issue. I'll find out for you. If that's what you want to know, I'll find out. So we don't always have to know the answer. We don't always have to be willing to give the answer, even if we know it. And essentially, what we need to do is we need to own who we are, what we think, and have the understanding within our own mind that we don't have to know everything, we don't have to answer everything, And also, we do need to know ourselves and who we are and be accepting of who we are to the point where we live a life where our voice is heard because we believe that's important. Just like it's important to me to hear your voice, it's important that you hear mine and that we have that mutuality. And so again, part of having a voice is having a mutual conversation which extends to a mutual relationship.
And that's so important, and it's not a confrontational thing to find your voice.
Not at all.
It's your own self-confidence to be able to share what you know and your sharing your opinions after what you believe about yourself. So if we follow the process of getting to know ourselves and then feeling comfortable or changing, then it's almost like you've given us the magic in order to address situations or answer questions whenever they might come our way.
Sounds good.
It sounds great, and I think if we can take your advice in order to apply it to any situation in our life, then there shouldn't be anything that we should be afraid to say or be afraid to confront ourselves with. And sometimes maybe it takes 10 seconds of courage, right?
Exactly, like the woman who didn't know about the cheese.
Right.
Maybe we don't know.
Right.
Gee, I don't have cheese very often. Let me try something.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, thanks so much, Susan, for, again, sharing great advice with us on how to find our voice. I'm Rose Martin for Susan Harf and Real Life. We really hope you'll join us again next time. Thanks, everybody.